The 2018 game Vampyr follows war veteran and doctor Jonathan Reed during the outbreak of the Spanish flu in 1918. Returning from the Great War to his hometown of London, Jonathan is killed and brought back to life, cursed as a powerful vampire by an unknown maker. Following an encounter with a surprisingly knowledgeable human who offers Jonathan a job, and another encounter with a fellow vampire who will come to help Jonathan understand the parameters of his new life, the player begins to be presented with the central choice of the game, whether to kill innocent and not so innocent people and feed on them as a vampire, or whether to heal people as a doctor. Now here's where the game gets interesting. While some people really enjoy doing evil playthroughs of games on purpose, plenty of people like to be more or less good, and most games with RPG characteristics cater to this, with the central character of a pseudo role-playing game as a hero in the universe in which they inhabit. But this game does almost the opposite. The game is actively more difficult for you if you choose to be good and avoid killing, even while acknowledging that that's the right thing to do. Because of the way the leveling system works in the game, you will always be underleveled fighting major bosses, and even lower level henchmen throughout the entire game. If you try to do good and avoid evil, the game almost punishes you for that decision and constantly questions your resolve to do good, just the same way Jonathan Reed is tempted to drink blood. This is a really interesting way to frame a video game, by giving the player a real obstacle that could be easily avoided if you only give up your stupid rule, which is the same thinking that would haunt Jonathan. At every single dialogue option or character lookup, you are reminded of how many experience points the person you are talking to is worth to your advancement in power and strength. And some NPCs are actively belligerent towards you in ways that practically beg you to kill them for their crimes. But as you progress throughout the game, you'll sometimes find that justice and a clear conscience will be a persuasive enough reason for characters to change their minds and follow a better path, in part because of your example and resolve not to murder. I think this structure can serve as a simple parable that doing good is more difficult than doing evil. Because of how I chose to play the game, to avoid killing, I had to find alternate ways of trying to level up my character, which led me to get to know NPCs and do side quests I would have otherwise ignored. The game designers spent a lot of effort on their NPCs so that each one is impactful rather than creating many NPCs who are meaningless faces you interact with a handful of times, like in many games. As a bonus for continuity, the game takes place at night, as well as during the Spanish flu, since you are a vampire, which acts as a perfect rationale for why there are so few NPCs roaming the streets in a large city like London. Of course, Vampyr has more to offer than its central mechanic. The story is overall pretty decent and engaging, but it really requires all optional dialogue options to be non-optional if you want to feel like you're getting the whole picture. This game has a lot of talking, but ultimately I'm fine with that since I like dialogue. As creative as the story is, there were some weird and sometimes baffling choices of character decisions it would have been nice to have more control over in a supposedly choice-based game. For instance, very early on in the game we're told that our vampire lady friend Elizabeth Ashbury has been euthanizing patients for blood, and our character isn't really given the option to criticize this decision in any meaningful way. The game seems to think that because Lady Ashbury doesn't kill unwilling victims that her behavior is fine, and it seems to really want the player to think the same thing since it gives two other instances of unalterable euthanasia-type scenarios in which the game doesn't even consider that you wouldn't be alright with it. That said, some of the ideas of the game are really well executed, like the lore of the vampires in this universe or their class system and society. Of course, one of the strongest elements of the game is the general aesthetic, from the melancholy cello music, eerie chanting, London setting, and oppressive night that starts to make you long for a daytime you can't experience without burning up. Overall, I found Vampyr an engaging and rewarding experience, and I hope a sequel is developed in the next couple of years. If what I've described so far sounds like your cup of tea, why not give the game a chance?